let's take our Bibles and turn to James chapter 3, please. And as you're turning to James chapter 3, I'd like to ask you, have any of you ever had a pet? Have you owned a pet of any sort, a horse or a gerbil, a dog or a cat? Have you had any kind of a pet, a lizard or a snake? Anybody have a pet? What kind of pets did you have? Oh, you've had it all. You had a whole farm. Yeah? Anybody else have a pet? What did you have? A canary. Yes. Oh, good. Anybody else have a pet? A dog. Yes. Now, did your pets come trained, or did you have to train them? You had to train them? Yeah. This was a dream that you had? Tell me that again. The canary taught the cat something. Oh. Well, I've never heard of that. That's a pretty amazing story. I remember one of the first funerals that I ever did was for a man named Leonard McGay, and I used to visit Leonard and Jackie almost every week. He was dying of cancer. And when it came time for his passing and his funeral, they had a really nice big white dog, and Jackie asked if the dog could come to the funeral. And you know me, I don't say no to anybody. So I said, sure, why not? And it was a really well-behaved dog. I was quite impressed, and I can still remember, not in this church, but in another church, the dog laid right at the end of the casket the whole time. It was really quite sweet, actually. It was so well-trained and tame. Well, as you know, there's wild animals and there's tame animals. And sometimes animals are pretty easy to tame. Sometimes they give us a lot of trouble. And sometimes kids are easy to train, and others are pretty wild. In James 3, we come up against the hardest thing in the world to train or to tame. Do you know what it is? It isn't a horse. It's a tongue. You've all got one, and some works overtime, and some of your tongues get you into a little bit of trouble. Has anybody here ever gotten in trouble by something they said? Did you say something to your mother and got in trouble for it, or something to the teacher and got in trouble for it? Oh, yeah. Has anybody never gotten in trouble by something that they said with their tongue? That's right. It's pretty wild. And tonight in James 3, we're going to learn that it takes the power of God to control your tongue. It took the power of God to create the world, to raise Christ from the dead, for Peter to walk on water, and the only way that your tongue isn't going to get you into more trouble is if God's power comes upon you to control it. And He can do that. He can help us tame our tongue. And if you remember in James, we took a little break last week, but James is all about spiritual maturity. And I display my spiritual maturity in a number of ways. For example, in the first chapter, by my responses to trials and temptations. In the second chapter, by being impartial and not treating the poor any worse than the rich, or any differently. Now in the third chapter, my spiritual maturity is going to be displayed by controlling my tongue. And it gets pretty practical here. Sometimes people like to hear deep theology, lots of things like supralapsarianism or the election of humanity. Today we're going to be very practical. We're going to talk about you controlling your tongue, and we're going to talk about us taming this wild beast that's inside all of our mouths. And we're going to read in James chapter 3. Let's read. verse 1. My brethren, be not many masters. Okay, that just means you don't want to be leading everything in town. Do you know why? You know why you don't want to be leading everything? Because every leader has a target on his back. So as soon as you stand up to lead something, somebody's going to shoot at you. Look, also it says, knowing that we shall receive the greater condemnation. So far better, he says, to sit in the pew and keep quiet than to be up leading everything all the time. Because you're going to have to give account for all of that. Now, in verse 2 it says, in many things. Now, do you agree with this? In many things we offend. Have there been lots of times in your life when you've offended people without even knowing it? Somebody gets mad at you and you say, what did I ever do? You don't even know what you did, but they're upset with you. In many things we offend all. If any man offend not in word. Okay, remember over in 1 John he says, if we say we have no sin, we deceive ourselves. It's the same idea here. If we say that we have never offended anyone with our words, the same is a perfect man and able to bridle the whole body. How many perfect men are there? Well, there is one. Yeah, and he's the only one who's able to control his tongue. Nobody else. So, verse 3. We put bits in horses' mouths. Some of you ride horseback, right? You know what a bit is, or a little bridle in the mouth of the horse. And they may obey us. And we turn about their whole body. Just that tiny little thing inside their mouth can control the direction of the entire horse. Now it gets even bigger because he moves on to a ship in verse 4. Behold also the ships, which though they be great, are driven of fierce winds, yet they are turned about by a very small helm or rudder, whithersoever the governor listeth. So can you see something very small controlling something very large? Now the lesson is your little tongue, positively or negatively, is going to have a lot to do with the direction of big things in your life, like your family, your marriage, your job, your career, your ministry. All of that is going to be affected positively or negatively by that little creature inside your mouth. It's going to go really well for you in your marriage and with your family and with your job and in the church if you control it, or if it's out of control, it's going to go really poorly in all those big areas of your life. So, verse 5, even so the tongue, it's a little member, boy, it boasteth great things. Behold how great a matter a little fire kindleth. So we're just getting bigger and bigger here, aren't we? We got the little bit in the horse's mouth, the small rudder on the large ship. Now we have just a little spark destroying the whole world because of a forest fire. And he's comparing all of that to the tongue. Verse 6, the tongue is a fire, it's a world of iniquity. So the tongue is the tongue among our members, that it defileth the whole body, and setteth on fire the course of nature, and is set on fire of hell. Every beast of the field, every kind of beast and bird and serpent and things of the sea is tamed, and hath been tamed of mankind. You know, they make dolphins jump through hoops down in SeaWorld. But listen to this, verse 8. The tongue can no man tame. It's an unruly evil, full of deadly poison. But there is somebody who can tame it, isn't it? There's no man, it says, that can tame the tongue. And by man in the Bible, you know we often mean men and women. There's no person that can control the tongue on earth. But the Lord can. The Lord can help me with everything. He can help me with my physical body and my health. He can help me with my finances. He can help me with my family. And he can help me to control my tongue. Now, talking about getting into trouble with your tongue, I'll tell you a little story. I did something really stupid the other day. Do you ever say something and as it's coming out of your mouth, you say, why would I ever say that? Well, I did that the other day. I was visiting with these two gentlemen, having a great chat. and met with them a number of times before, and we talked about many different subjects, always prayed together, read the Bible together, have a great time together. And for some reason, in the middle of the conversation the other day, I decided to say something stupid. I don't know why I did. As it was coming out of my mouth, I said, no, don't say that. But I kept saying it. I have known since 2015 never to talk to any person about Donald Trump. I have known that because it only makes an argument. Because it doesn't matter if you like him or you hate him, the other person is going to be just the opposite. And they're either going to love him or hate him. Well, I decided to say something negative about him the other day. And as soon as I said it, I realized these two people are great Trump supporters. And if you've ever met a Trump supporter, they are full-on Trump supporters. Oh dear, why? Why would I ever bring up such a controversial subject? Stick to preaching, right? Stick to Jesus. Stick to the Bible. Don't get off into politics and meddle in people's affairs. Oh boy, I made a big mess of things. So then I had to apologize. I'm so sorry. I know well enough not to talk about that. I'm sorry I even brought it up. And I just tried to swallow my words. But have you ever done that? Have you ever done something that you just... I went home and I said to Lisa, why would I ever say that? So I'm stupid with my tongue, and I presume that sometimes you have a few things that you're not very proud of. I try to remember this little poem when I'm preaching. I've said it many, many times in my mind. Lord, fill my mouth with worthwhile stuff, and nudge me when I've said enough. You know, just give me a little nudge and say, don't say anything else. Just stop talking. Because the power of our words are such that we can really help a situation and a person, or we can really hurt a person. So let me give you a few suggestions here on how we can keep from getting into trouble, me included. These are for me. I wrote these down thinking of myself. Let's go to Proverbs 10 for a moment. Proverbs 10. This is a really good suggestion for anybody who speaks. Now, some of you don't like to talk very much, and you're probably wiser than me. Because Proverbs 10:19 says, in the multitude of words there wanteth not sin, but he that refraineth his lips is wise. Do you agree with that? The less you talk, the less likely you're going to say something you regret. The less we say, the wiser we are. Have you ever been in a meeting with people and there's one person who just controls the whole meeting? They talk the whole time. And then there's somebody who doesn't say very much at all. Who is the wisest person in that meeting? Is it the person who's always contributing, always talking? Probably not. It's often if you'll say, Jim, what do you think? And it's often dear old quiet Jim who's been processing the whole thing, thinking about the whole thing, not saying anything. He can sum it up and knows more than the rest of us who've been talking all night long. Have you ever been in a meeting like that and just say, wow, the strong, silent type, they're wise oftentimes. So which are you? Are you the one who talks all the time, or are you the one who's more quiet? It says it's almost like an equation. The less I speak, the more I'm wise. And so the more I speak, the less wise I probably am. And we really have to measure our words and try and be very careful. Now, let me give you another suggestion. Not only do I help control my tongue by not saying a lot, and by the way, that doesn't mean I don't want you to talk. I don't want you to go home and say, oh, Pastor doesn't want me to say anything at church. we just want you to choose your words wisely. Let's go back to Proverbs 6. What kind of words could I stop saying then if I have to reduce the amount of speech? Proverbs 6:16 gives me a hint. Proverbs 6:16 says, "These 6 things doth the Lord hate, yea, 7 are an abomination unto him, a proud look and a lying tongue." So if I want to reduce the amount of words that I say and become wiser, then I can cut out all the lies that I tell. Do you ever tell a lie? Somebody says, "How are you?" And you say, "I'm just fine," and you know that you're not just fine. That's a lie. And so we go back to not saying anything. You know, I've never been bold enough to say it because I'm not a very bold person. But sometimes people ask me things that I really don't want to tell them. And especially about the church, you know, like they'll say, "Well, what's going on in so-and-so's life? And what's happening?" And I don't want to tell them. So, I shouldn't tell them. But I want to say to them, "I'll forgive you for asking if you'll forgive me for not telling." But I've never actually used that before. So cut out all the lying words. Stop lying about why you're late if you're not late for that reason, or stop saying nobody loves me when you know that God loves you. You know, there's lots of lies that we tell all the time. And then let's go over to Proverbs 15, verse 2, and I'll just sum this up a little bit. Proverbs 15, verse 2. Cut out the lying words. And Proverbs 15:2 says, "The tongue of the wise useth knowledge aright, but the mouth of fools poureth out foolishness." So, foolish words. You know, a lot of the kind of silly things that we talk about, it really doesn't have to be said. And more than foolish, there's a lot of filthy words that we could all cut out of our mouths. So if I'm not going to lie or talk about foolish and filthy things, what in the world am I going to say? You say, I've become a Christian. I got to change my whole language now because I used to swear all the time and I used to talk about people all the time. What am I going to say? Well, the Bible talks about gracious words, kind words, true words, and I like Psalm 19:14. "Let the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, my God and my Redeemer." So whatever would please the Lord, that's what I'm going to talk about. Whatever God would be pleased with hearing, that's what I'm going to say. So the tongue can be controlled with the power of God. It's a wild beast. But if we cut out by his power lies and foolishness and talk more about kindness and goodness, we'll be a lot wiser and the world will be a lot better. Let me end with these few quotes. Somebody said, "Better to remain silent and be thought a fool than open your mouth and remove all doubt." And somebody else said, "When all is said and done, there's a lot more said than done." So maybe we should just work and not talk so much. Okay, I'll end with my favorite words. God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. Aren't those great words? They come right from God's heart. Any comments about your tongue or about speech or anything you'd rather I not say? Oh, I've heard that. I think there's some merit in that, but I like to hear kids. I like to have the kids up on stage on Sunday. That little girl, did you see her on Sunday? Ainsley was sitting beside me, and the new little girl, she came right up and she squeezed right in between the two of us, backed right in. She was a cute little one. Yeah, I love children, that's for sure. They always say, if you want to tell the health of a church, go down and look in the nursery. If there's any kids in the nursery being loved and growing up to love Jesus, that's a good church. All right, let's take some prayer requests.